Hey, welcome back to 65 Drums. My name's Justin. Today I want to talk about drum module firmware updates. A lot of people are going through life playing their drum set just the way it was when they bought it from the store, not realizing that if they just downloaded the update from Alesis.com or Roland or Pearl or whatever company that you bought your drum set from, if you download the update, you might be getting a bunch of free sounds, faster kit loading times, support for new pads that weren't available when you first bought your drum set. There's all kinds of great stuff that happens when you update your drum module. So today I want to go through a bunch of different manufacturers, a bunch of different drum modules, and talk about the different updates that have happened. And by the way, this is really important if you bought a drum set early on in its life cycle. So for example, if you bought a TD50 back when it was launched in 2016, there have been updates since then that are very important. Or if you bought an Alesis Strike Pro back when it was really new. Since then, there have been like 3 or 4 separate updates that have added a ton of stuff. But I will be the first to mention that having updates as an available tool for the drum manufacturers is a good and a bad thing at the same time. Just like in the video game industry, back in the 80s, back in the 90s, they had to be perfect from the get-go. There was no series of 10 updates to perfect it slowly over time, fixing it in post. With drum modules now, the temptation for some of these drum manufacturers is to send out the drum sets 80% ready, and then we'll just fix the trigger settings later. We'll add a couple of extra sounds because there's not quite enough at launch. I've seen more and more of this over the years, and I don't like that progression. So while I do think there's a lot of potential for negative side effects of having updates, I still think it is a net positive and a great thing to be able to get more free sounds without having to install a whole new chip. Like, remember the Roland TD1 expansion board? That wasn't just an over-the-air update. That was literally a physical extra chip that you had to buy and install into your module. But anyway, let's jump into a list of different drum modules and what kind of updates have been happening to it over the last couple of years. Starting with the Alesis Strike. I gotta mention the Alesis Strike first because this module has had a lot of very notable updates. This is a drastically better module. Alesis actually has a PDF that you can download from their website that outlines all the different updates that they've done since its inception. So let's talk about a couple of those. So the first thing is that they've just added a bunch of free kits. I think on 2 separate occasions they've given you a bunch of free kits, and that makes it over half a gigabyte of free sounds that they've just added. I love that. And the best thing about these sounds, in my opinion, is the fact that they're drastically better than the ones that come preloaded with the kit itself. So especially if you bought an Alesis Strike Pro or a regular Alesis Strike early on in its production, you don't have these updates, install them on your module. If you recently bought an Alesis Strike drum set of some kind, you probably already have these updates installed. In addition to the free sounds, they also have faster load times now. They've also updated the visuals of the drum module. That little kit avatar that sits there on the main screen and lights up depending on where you're hitting on the drum set, that looks way better with the newer updates. And then finally, there were updates to the hi-hat. I don't think the hi-hat, even with the updates, is quite on the level of a VH13 or a VH10, but at least is better because of the updates. And especially if you buy the Strike Pro SE variant, that new hi-hat is a little bit different, and I think it triggers much better than the regular Strike Pro hi-hats or the regular Strike hi-hats. So next up is the Roland TD50. There's been a couple of updates here, and it's nothing quite as drastic as what we've seen with the Alesis Strike, but it's important to have these if you haven't installed this already. They've added brush support to the TD50, which is fun to have, but not necessarily a giant game changer for most people. I used it like once to make a video with my Roland TD30, and I haven't really used brushes with it since, but some people, they just really like playing with brushes on electronic drums. They also say they fixed machine gunning with one of the updates on the TD50. Machine gunning is a term that electronic drummers use when you hit a pad over and over again at the same velocity and hear a very similar sound over and over again. So it sounds like a machine gun. And then finally, they've done a series of different bug fixes. I know that earlier on when the TD50 was first launched, some of the earlier users of the TD50 say that every once in a while they'd hit like the Kickdrum and it just wouldn't pick up some of the hits. There was like some sort of bug in the TD50 and Roland had to fix that with one of the updates. Okay, so next up is the Pearl Mimic Pro. Now the thing about Pearl is that they've sort of split their updates into 2 separate things that you download. You can download the interface updates where they change around where the buttons are and the way everything looks. And there's a separate update just for the core library, which is an interesting way of doing things. I gotta say that Pearl's update process is kind of time consuming. You're gonna have to learn how to do it. And I've actually made a tutorial to show you how to do that if you wanna go check out that video. But they've made some significant nice updates to this over the years. So let's talk about that. So first of all, they made the interface a little bit better, a little bit less confusing. They can do that because it's a touchscreen, obviously. With a TD50, if you want to make the interface less confusing, you can't. There's no update in the world that could dream up to make it less confusing because the buttons are all set in stone. Meanwhile, with this, you can change it year after year after year and make it better over time. Also something that could be done with the Gava G9 digital drum workstation. And like Alesis, they've also been adding more free sounds. Not quite as many free sounds, but the sounds they're adding are very high quality. In the last update, they've also added more articulations to some of the cymbals in the module, and they've added more pad presets to make it easier to dial in different drums and cymbals not made by Pearl. Because to be honest, people buy this module because it works with most different pads out there in the market. Very similar to the 2-box Drummet 3 and Drummet 5, and also ATV's 85 module. You buy it because you can mix and match different components. And one thing that has always been missing is the fact that a lot of people buy ATV drum sets and then add a Pearl Mimic module. So now they've got some pad presets. The one that I know of for sure is that they added a pad preset for the 14-inch ATV hi-hat. That's something that I didn't have. I didn't have this update back when I did my original review of the Pearl Mimic Pro. So I think I used the VH12 preset and then dialed it in to work with the ATV hi-hats that I had, and it worked just fine. But now they have a dedicated preset for that hi-hat, which is nice to see. I also like the fact that the module just loads new kits quicker now, and also there's been a host of different bug fixes, just like with all the different modules that we've seen on this list. Jumping ahead to the Roland TD30, there hasn't been any giant update, but they've done some very useful things. For example, they've added trigger presets to the Roland RT30 line of triggers, the BT1 bar trigger, and the Roland KT1 pedal. Those pads just didn't exist back when they first launched the TD30, and that's why those pad presets weren't already in the module. They've also done some bug fixes, but the most important thing that I think they've done is they have better MIDI functionality when triggering the hi-hat through drum software. That's really important for me because I use Superior Drummer 3, so I love the fact that they made that update. And if you go back to an earlier update, 1.10, Roland added USB audio support, so you can record right and left audio tracks straight to your computer without needing an audio interface and 1/4-inch cables. It's just a nice time-saving way to record your electronic drums. Roland has expanded this feature in newer drum modules, like the TD27, can record tons and tons of individual channels, but I believe this was the first module where Roland had USB audio support. They also let you adjust the digital audio input/output gain inside of the module as well inside of this update. So yet another reason to go update your TD30 if you have one of the older ones that isn't up to the current firmware. So moving ahead to the ATV 85 drum module, they're kind of like Roland, which makes sense because ATV is a bunch of people that used to work at Roland. They don't really have any giant updates. What you're mostly going to see when you update the firmware is bug fixes. You're going to see added pad support, stuff like that. But on their website, they do have a lot of free sounds that you can download. So go to their website if you have an earlier version of the ATV module that doesn't have all the sounds, and you can download extra ride cymbals, extra snares, extra kick drums, and there are some extra paid sounds you can get as well if you feel like spending $5 here and there. And speaking of electronic drum websites, if you have a 2-box drum module, go to 2box.com because they have a host of different free drum sounds that you can just download and install into your drum module. You don't have to download all of them. You can actually audition individual sounds just like ATV, figure out if you like this ride cymbal and that kick drum, and then download them. And the best part is that they're free. Okay, so that is about it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. I really do appreciate it. Have an amazing day, and I'll see you guys in a few.